never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah. Wait, I think I'll last a bit longer. Find another.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. It is a Saturday. Hopefully everybody's ready for another wonderful weekend. Don't forget that my show is brought to you by the fanboys and the fangirls at thefanboys.com, which I am a part of, not only with here on YouTube, Ref Brandon and the Todd family, but also the wrestling and racing show that we do every single week. You can also follow us at winningedgesportsnetwork.com for all your sports news and notes. Again, check us out online at winningedgesportsnetwork.com or thefanboys.com. Today here on the channel, we're going to be talking some more about all these players that have transferred. Now, I never heard the exact total of how many players transferred, but I did hear that it's right at 1,400, and that is a lot of players. I've already did a couple of videos about this, but every single day, every single week, there's more and more players that are announcing where their new school is going to be. So today, in case you've missed any of it, I'm going to talk about the players that are transferring that I, for the most part, have not talked about yet. There's a few players on this list whose name you'll recognize because I've talked about them before if you follow the channel. But for the most part, these are the players that we have not talked about being in the transfer portal. And I want to try to catch you up on all the players that are transferring and where they are going to school next. Now, there's still a few that have not announced where they're going to go to school at now. This list was current as of Tuesday. We have quarterback Walker Howard, who was at LSU. He's transferring, but he has not, as of yet, announced his new school. Then we have defensive lineman Jordan Burch, who left South Carolina to go to Oregon. Wide receiver John Paul Richardson left Oklahoma State to go to TCU. Running back Trayshawn Ward goes from Florida State to Kansas State. Wide receiver Andrell Anthony goes from Michigan to Oklahoma. Quarterback Sam Heward, who is the nephew of quarterback Brock Heward, who still does television for Fox, is leaving Washington. He has not, as of yet, announced where he is going to transfer to. Wide receiver Dante Thornton is transferring from Oregon to Tennessee. Quarterback Malik Hornsby, who a lot of folks thought was going to be the next quarterback at Arkansas, has transferred from there and gone to a much, much, much smaller school, Texas State. Quarterback Brennan Armstrong transfers from Virginia to NC State. Now, NC State just named Robert Anae their new offensive coordinator, and he used to be the OC at Virginia. So Brennan Armstrong goes to reunite with his former OC at Virginia. Running back Marshawn Lloyd goes from the fake USC, South Carolina, to the real USC, the Trojans. And then a guy we've talked about here on the channel numerous times, quarterback Sam Hartman, goes from Wake Forest to Notre Dame. Running back Trey Sanders transfers from Alabama to TCU. Wide receiver Michael Sturdivant leaves California. He has not yet announced his new school. Running back Carson Steele transfers from Ball State to UCLA. Wide receiver Bryson Green leaves Oklahoma State, and he has not yet announced where he is going to. Defensive back Jahad Carter transfers from Syracuse to Ohio State. Running back Dylan Johnson transfers from Mississippi State to Washington. Quarterback Davis Brin goes from Tulsa to Georgia Southern. And then Grayson McCall, who was at Coastal Carolina, put his name in the portal and then took it out. He's going to stay at Coastal Carolina. Cornerback Fentrell Cypress goes from Virginia to Florida State. Quarterback Tanner Mordecai, who started his career at Oklahoma, and then he was third string there, so he went to SMU. He's played there the last couple of seasons. Now he is transferring to Wisconsin. He'll be the new quarterback for Luke Fickell with the Badgers. And then another quarterback, Luke Altmaier, who was at Ole Miss, is transferring to Illinois. Quarterback Jack Plummer transfers from California to Louisville. And the funny thing about him is, since he's a quarterback and his last name is Plummer, everybody thinks he is somehow kin to former Arizona State quarterback Jake the Snake Plummer. But they say there's no relation between Jake and Jack Plummer. And the last guy we'll talk about is another quarterback, and that is Hudson Card, who was at Texas, but of course he doesn't like being a backup, so he's leaving Texas to go to Purdue. He was the backup this year behind Quinn Ewer, so he's going to go ahead and go to Purdue, because since Aiden O'Connell is no longer with Purdue, more than likely Hudson Card will be their starting quarterback next year. There was a few names on that list from guys I've talked about already, but for the most part, these are players that we have not yet discussed here on the channel, and you have to do a lot of these videos in the off season, otherwise you just get too far behind. And I hate to do it, because you do it now and the season is 7.5 months away, so unless you're a fan of one of these teams, you're going to forget about it until your team, whoever they are, plays one of these teams, and then you see that player and you're like, oh yeah, he transferred there. Because there's just too many teams and too many players to keep up with. But if you don't do at least one of these a month for a few months, by the time June or July gets here, there's 500 players you haven't discussed. So I was trying to talk about a lot of the ones we have not talked about as of yet. Of course, if you follow sports, you've probably heard about most of these, but there are a few under the radar players that, even though they transfer, they don't get talked about. Now, if you listened and you caught it, you seen there was 2 players on here that are transferring from wherever they're leaving to TCU. There's also an offensive lineman that I did not talk about who is transferring to TCU. I bring that up because Garrett Riley goes there for 1 season and has so much success, and all the offensive players like the offense he runs, so they leave their school to go be part of that offense, and now Garrett Riley leaves to go to Clemson. So hopefully, for his sake, he'll have the same kind of success at Clemson that he had at TCU. Now, of course, if you follow his career, he's never stayed at one school for a long period of time. So on the surface, you think, well, he's not going to be there long, but this is the biggest job he's had. So just because he hasn't stayed other jobs for a long time doesn't mean he won't stay at Clemson for a long time. But you also got to remember, not everybody that's an assistant coach wants to be a head coach. If he goes to Clemson and he has the same success he had at SMU and TCU, he might stay there for 10 years if he doesn't want to be a head coach. But if he wants to be a head coach and he goes there and he brings that success along with him, more than likely in 3 or 4 years, he'll be a head coach somewhere. But people always think that every good assistant coach wants to be a head coach. And for the most part, most of them do. But there are a few that say there's too many headaches involved in that. I don't want to do that. So is Garrett Riley going to be one of those? We don't know yet. Any thoughts on any of these players? Please feel free to let me know. Finally, a quick shout out to our sponsors, Arden's Burger and Grill in Central South Carolina, and Ride and Shine Detail of the Upstate. And don't forget about Building Homes, Rebuilding Lives, Homes for the Troops, a non-profit organization. Check them out online at hfotusa.org. And I hope to see a lot of you tonight at 244 Livestock Road, East Denali, Georgia. Doors open at 6 o'clock. Bell time is 7 o'clock for some SWA wrestling. Ticket prices are the cheapest you're going to find this day and time, so no reason why you can't come out tonight to 244 Livestock Road, East Denali, Georgia. Doors open at 6 o'clock. Bell time will be 7 o'clock for some great SWA wrestling. Come on out and see the SWA debut of Garrett Sinclair. I've heard a lot of good things about him. I've seen some of his matches on YouTube, so I'm excited about meeting him in person tonight. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. Why was the ghost so tired? He worked the graveyard shift. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.